I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B. That was the Mayday. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Coming up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor. Second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Welcome to our Fire Engineering Podcast, The Command Post. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good bud, Chief John Salka, and we've got another great show lined up for you today. John, golly, man. First of all, with everything going on with the coronavirus, it only makes sense, that they postponed FDIC, 35,000 people coming together for a week. This is right as the governor in Indiana was saying, nothing over 250 people. Now it's nothing over like 25 and 50 in most states. But, it made sense to me, buddy. Last thing we do.
It makes more than sense. And we're just 1 week of the year there with that gigantic convention center in that city that hosts conference and convention after conference and convention. Like I said, a week or two later, they got the candlestick makers convention, and then they got the real estate convention, and then they got the fast food convention. And every time I bet somewhere between 10 and 20 and 30,000 people come in. Now that city would be decimated in very short order. So
it's naturally at first, a lot of people were making light of this, and some of the memes you see on Facebook and Twitter and some of the social media sites, are humorous about the toilet paper, and I got a chuckle out of them. My wife posts some stuff, but some of the things, John, there's been some nastiness, and I'm like, I guess you didn't have a grandma or grandpa that died from this, or some of your family affected, or you haven't been quarantined in your house for 2 weeks, or your firehouse or whatever, just was had to been cleaned and scrubbed, and you had to be sent home.
I haven't even seen any of the nastiness, but you know what? Just move on. This is just another chapter. Turn the page. Keep on moving. They'll either reschedule it or we'll do it next year, or whatever happens. And you know what? Here's another really good idea for those folks. Get a life. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people are just hanging on Facebook and all these ridiculous things all day long. Go watch Dr. Phil or something, or go outside and play baseball with your kid or something. It's, it's terrible. We're all disappointed. It's unchangeable. Don't worry about stuff you can't change. How many times do we say that in our company officer academy to the future leaders of the fire service? Man, oh man, don't spend a minute, not a half a minute, worrying about something that you have no impact on.
Yeah, exactly. Worry about the things you fix, not things you can't. And Bobby and Diane and everybody, they're working hard to figure out if they're going to try and reschedule for this fall or just shoot.
I think I know what's going to happen, and in the end, it doesn't matter. And in the end, it's just whatever they can get done will get done, and we'll all be there again.
Well, and John, you and I've talked about this. Excuse me, I posted something the other day. That was, look, there's plenty of training opportunities right now, right from your own computer in your firehouse with your crew or at home or whatever. And that's fireengine.com. You went to that site for this show.
Right.
That's Firefighter Nation. That's GEMS. We've said this before. You can go to YouTube. You've said it before. Go to YouTube and type in Mayday or House Fire.
You could watch all day.
You'll spend the rest of your life watching and not get through all the videos. And that's the same thing with all the sites that you can go to. Plenty of opportunities out there to do stuff. So, but I guess, John, the thing, as leaders, you're a fire chief. You've got a department. You've been doing all kinds of meetings with folks there about everything going on with this. This is serious stuff. Like I said, it's okay to laugh about people and the whole hoarding toilet paper. As much as some of that's nonsense, that's a very normal. I saw that on Fox, and even before that, it's a very normal. When people are faced with a crisis like this, a very normal thing is security-wise. It's whatever. It's toilet paper, or it's food, or it's water, or it's baby food, whatever. We used to joke every time that it would snow down here in Texas. They talk about ice store. Everybody's running to the store buying all the formula and milk and all the water and baby diapers and stuff. But it's a normal thing for people that aren't. I guess we take it for granted being an emergency, first responders, that
being normal.
Yeah. Some of these other people, man, they're scared. And John, I mean, you talked about this before on the phone with me. Oh my God. I mean, my daughter got laid off, and I mean, all the jobs and not everybody's sitting there with a pension or with, all this money that I guess probably half the country, if you look at the total country, a lot of them, 2-income families with kids, they're trying to pay the bills, they're trying to do things. So this is pretty serious shit for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And that's not even talking about the actual medical, the actual danger, the disease end of it, the virus end of it. It's hairy stuff. And if you get it, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. And if you're really old or really fragile, you might not make it. So yeah, it is serious stuff, and everybody has to. What's great? What's great about the whole situation is the solution is really very simple. Stay at home. Now that sounds simple. Maybe financially it's not simple for some folks, but stay at home. Don't mess around with people. Don't go outside and get too close to anybody. And in a matter of a couple of weeks, this thing is going to probably peak. And obviously, people are going to get sick, and some people are going to die. But most folks are able to stay out of the path of other people.
Well, and they were throwing the facts up there on Fox about how many people last year. The 600,000, whatever it is, people that, got the flu, and 300,000 treated in the hospital, and all the, thousands of deaths. And again, this could be a lot. See, I think everybody's doing the right thing, John, clamping down, shutting down it. But oh my God, I just, I guess what the appeal should be, just saying a few nice words to God and pray for these people that are trying to figure out, they're dipping into college funds. Some don't even have it. They're like, how are they paying for their and I guess one of the things, John, I liked about the plan that our president was pushing through with both parties was, there's like millions of kids that every day, the only meal they eat, millions, is the free breakfast at lunch. Your daughter's a teacher. She knows that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, there's a whole lot of different kind of people out there in different financial and social situations. And, you got to hope that everybody makes it through and people get some immediate help somewhere. But as always in America, everybody is coming through. Everybody is stepping up, and there are all sorts of places there's a brewery or not even a brewery. I don't know, the kind of a place that makes whiskey and stuff like that. And they're making material and liquid that people can disinfect with. Right. They're making disinfectant in their big machine that they only make liquor and sell and make money. So
it's like
people are doing it.
It's like World War II, where plants were changed into. I mean, it's just seen, and it's been pretty good. For everything going on. Terry McGrath said the other day on my Hump Day Hangout show, John. He said, as a word and our message to our firefighters, God love you, we appreciate you, but this is what you signed up for. You signed up to take care of people, and that wasn't just to fight fires. That was to face all kinds of circumstances. We want you to be safe. We want you to take care of each other. We want you to take care of your families, but. And he said, that's the first half. The second half was, John, oh my God, I just posted something a little while ago. I'm just so proud of our firefighters, police officers, dispatchers, EMS providers, our hospitals, our nurses and doctors. I mean, how could you not be? I mean, your family, you've got Marines, you've got school teachers, you have nurses, you have everything in your family. How could you not be proud?
Oh, you're right. You're right. And like you said, this is what you signed up for. And some people signed up for the fire department for leather helmets and for brotherhood and for tiller rigs and all that stuff is nice when things are going well. But you know what? Once in a while, it hits the fan, and you got to buckle down and say, holy crap, are we going to be okay? And the answer is, we're not quite sure yet, but we got a job to do. There's people out there waiting for us. There's people out there depending on us right now. All the firemen can't call in sick. I just had a run an hour ago with my Volunteer Firehouse for smoke in the kitchen. And 2 rigs showed up with 9 guys. 9 guys went out of the safety of their home and got to the firehouse, put their gear on, and showed up ready to go inside and help some people.
Let's talk about that for a second, John, because we know we're rescheduling. You and I are rescheduling our classes to our listeners. Just check our calendars. Everything's being rescheduled and new classes. We have people are hurrying up and grabbing dates for this fall already because we're sliding everything out the next couple of months. But John, you being the chief of your department. We know what's going on. We've been reading about the FDNY and some of the guys who have tested positive and some of the quarantines, things like that. I had Dr. Kaufman, who I adore. He's the medical director for not just Louisville, but for a whole bunch of cities in the Metroplex there, Dallas, Fort Worth. What a great man, what a smart man, what a great doctor. And he cleared up a lot of misinformation yesterday too. But what, and we were talking about responses. What are you guys doing? I know you've been having your meetings with your department and with your government people.
Well, the two things I'd like to talk about. The first one, I'll talk briefly about the Volunteer Firehouse, which is a pretty simple fix. Number one is we closed the firehouse. We got together with the chiefs and the commissioners. We closed the firehouse. No social hanging around, no sitting upstairs in the lounge or at the TV or even hanging around the apparatus floor. Just no hanging around the firehouse. Firehouse is closed for runs only. You get a run, you get an alarm. Everything's fine. You go right in. There's nothing wrong in there. We just don't want people assembling and starting where a potential problem could occur. So that's the first thing. Second thing is after they get back from a run, everybody just wipes it down because, you may have something on you that you touched on the way there or whatever. So, they just wipe the handles and the control and the steering wheel and all that stuff down and right back out of the firehouse, close the firehouse. When we get to a box and we get to a location, if it's food on the stove or an electrical box sparking or something, like just two people will go in. Everybody else will stay outside. An officer and a firefighter go in. If there's any doubt about anything, in other words, they ask a couple of quick questions at the front door. Is anybody here sick or been sick or anybody exposed that you know about? Yes, no. If necessary, they already have them on. They can just don the face pieces, still go in and handle something as easy as food on the stove or an electrical, outlet sparking with an SCBA on. Come back out and, at least they won't have breathed in anything. Most of this coronavirus contamination is through either hard surfaces or inhaling droplets. They don't inhale the droplets. They're going to be in good shape. They got their coats and stuff like that and gloves. They said pretty much do not, support the virus to live very long. It's minutes, they said. So the hard surfaces are different. If somebody was to cough on a hard surface or touch a hard surface with a contaminated hand, it could last there for hours. So that's the Volunteer Firehouse. But actually, I was surprised when a friend of mine who's down at 27 Truck told me what's going on in the FDNY. Pretty interesting stuff. The first one is, obviously, they got caught by surprise, I think, a couple of days ago when, a couple of guys got contaminated somewhere, which caused the whole firehouse immediately to be sent home.
Whole place.
The whole place, meaning not just who's there, but whoever was there the day before or the day after. So everybody's home. There's like 30, 40, 50 guys at home on 2 weeks, sabbatical. Having said that, what they started doing was immediately isolating every firehouse. And how they did that was wherever you work is where you go to work. If 12, they changed the schedule. They changed the work schedule. There's no group chart anymore. Now the FDNY went very quickly, and it's only temporarily, but the FDNY went temporarily to an ABCD system. It's almost like the 4 shifts like everybody else already has. We went to the ABCD system. So now everybody's in a shift. When A works on Monday, you come to work 9 to 9, 24 hours, no days, no nights. You go home for 3 days, you come back, that day, 24 hours. So if on Monday, when the A shift comes in, if we only need 14 guys in the firehouse, if 18 guys show up, 18 guys stay there. They don't detail anybody out to another place because if later that afternoon they find out a guy from that shift is contaminated, now we send somebody to another whole firehouse too. So everybody stays only in their assigned firehouse. If they're short guys, they hire the guys that are either coming off or the guys from the firehouse that just went home yesterday or whatever. So everybody is pretty much restricted to their own firehouse alone. And they don't cross the barriers and go even in the battalion to anywhere else. Just in case somebody does get, contaminated, it could just be those shift guys that they send home. And then, the other guys in the other shifts can cover that one. Rather than if one guy goes to this firehouse, one guy goes to that firehouse, and it turns out a guy in the middle firehouse was contaminated too, you could have 3 firehouses knocked out in one afternoon,
Yeah, and that's
interesting stuff.
And that seems to be the norm right now is, minimum to this, we're not going to do trainings. We're not going from firehouse to firehouse. Just stay put, and the whole thing, they were talking about, and I think some great sites, John, as we know, and I want to mention these for our listeners, CDC, the CDC.gov, man, or at CDC.gov for Twitter fans. They've got a great site. They've got great information. It's easy to work through. And the iChiefs, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, IAFC.org, they did a great webinar, if you will, with some great
Ludwig, Gary Ludwig, yeah.
Yeah, they did some, our president, Gary Ludwig, did that. So there's some great sites out there. You know, the whole thing, like you said, it's you know, all right, if you have somebody as they're vetting, dispatch is getting better at vetting the calls, and then if you go there and you're also suspect, you keep your, you know, only maybe two EMTs go in, the rest outside, and like you said, one you talk to them, you stay your 6-7 feet, because 6 feet is what they say where the droplets really can't travel, you know. And
let me add one thing though. Let me interrupt you just for a moment. You mentioned the CDC website. You mentioned the International Association of Fire Chiefs. Everybody's going to be very careful. Don't just go surfing around on the web looking for information, because it is not all correct. As always, there are people out there that are full of baloney. Right. And that are just talking stuff. I heard from my wife, uncovered a couple of things the other day on Facebook, from friends of ours, from people we know, saying, "Oh, Dawn, you know what? My sister, her friend is a nurse in the ICU." And now that's already third hand. My sister's friend, who's a nurse, told me. Now she's telling my wife, and my wife is saying, "Stop. I don't want to say it's not true, because maybe it is, but I don't know what it is." And don't spread stuff like that. Everybody should just go to established organizational websites like the CDC, like their local Department of Health, right? Not to, not to the fools, coronavirus information network. No. Nothing against the fools. I'm just using them as an example. Only go to good established websites.
Well, exactly. And that's why I brought that up. And the other day we did our Hump Day hangout with Dr. Kaufman, and we had people that are well-versed, that if you will, are experts with this stuff. And we were talking, and they were saying, look, best thing you do, if you'd also, suspect it, put a mask on the patient and make sure you mask up. If you just do that, it knocks it down to like 90%. And then one person does everything. And they're, I'll tell you what Louisville's doing, John. They've got one ambulance out of all their ambulances. They have one ambulance that's dedicated to just these types of calls, if there's any suspect, and the guys, they respond, and they've got all the extra protective clothing you need, so on and so forth. And I asked their EMS chief, Michael Spinuzzi, I said, so, I'm very partial to Louisville, as you know, and I know you are. I said, so when you telling guys, okay, you're assigned in an ambulance today, I said, I know those. Did you have anybody? And through our conversation, what came up was, well, some guys were saying, look, you've got kids, I'm single, I'm taking, he says, I've got guys waiting. I had guys step up and say, put me on that rig, which is just like you said before, that's the fire service. That's how we deal with things. So, but anyway, folks, there's a whole lot of different, watch the webinar. It's on the iChiefs website, iafc.org. CDC's got some great information, or like John, you said, your local county, state or county health department. There's some great sites, but it's easy to get swallowed up into the whole social media, look out and do all this and so on and so forth stuff, and that's how we get some of that stuff going on. So anyway, but hey, let's talk about a couple of things here, buddy. One is you and I were talking about this the other day, as we do. We visit, probably talk almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day. We're teaching. But we were talking about in class the other day, the lost art. We've done forcible entry shows before, but the lost art of forced entry when it comes to the Halligan. And I know in New York City, the FDNY, I remember Donnie Haid telling me a long time ago, our good friend Donnie Haid said, and this is back when he was on Squad 1 as a captain, he's like, we've gotten so spoiled with the rabbit tool, with the hydraulic tools, that the skills with the Halogen are kind of diminishing a little bit, because guys aren't using it as much. And, and I know there was a lot of attention drawn to that. So let's get back to the base. Let's get back to knowing how to use the Halogen. I'll tell you real quick before I ask you about that. My guys came in years ago and they say, hey, we want to try this new FUBAR tool. And I'm like, what's it for? I knew what it was, but they're telling me. I said, well, okay, yeah, we'll get it for all the rigs. But first, there's 257 known uses for a Halligan. Give me just 50 of them. And if you give me 50 of them, we'll buy the new tool. But if you can't, how about we learn how to use the one that we already have? And I guess that's the first thing I'd ask you, John, is, how do you feel, or where do you see the fire service nowadays with proficiency with the Halligan when it comes to use?
Well, you know what? I think the proficiency is pretty good. When you mentioned the rabbit tool, going back to the rabbit tool, I was a firefighter in Rescue 3 when the first rabbit tool, sort of walked into the FDNY. It was Marty Mcdean Marty was a great guy. Retired as a battalion chief. Marty was seriously injured as a captain of Rescue 4 in an industrial accident where there was victims but Marty was a great lieutenant in Rescue 3, and along with Pete Lund and lots of other guys. I remember working with Marty, and in addition to being just a guy with great experience and knowledge, one day he walked in with the rabbit tool. It was the old one. It was the big jaw with the 6 or 8 foot hose and a big black bag that came. That's what the cylinder was. With the handle on it. And anyway, he explained it to it what it was. It was a friend of his from down in Maryland, a chief that sort of put it together and invented it and wanted to test it. And he brought it up to Rescue 3. And I always tell a story with and we always laugh when I tell it, because Marty said, a couple of young guys, Jay Jonas was there, and John Norman was there, and I was there, and Nick Giordano, and a whole bunch of guys that have since turned into mature, very well-known, very, very talented guys. We were all just young firefighters eager to go to fires back then. And then we had a bunch of old buffaloes there, too, a bunch of 50-year-old men that had been there for 20 years. They were not interested in this new tool in the least. They all had broken fingers and everything else from banging around with the Halligan and the axe and in the old days and the smoke and all. And he said, just throw it on the rig and take it. And when you can use it, slide it in. And I remember the first run I went on, the thing almost hit me in the head when one of the guys threw it out the back door as we drove out the door. As we rolled out the door, it went right past my face. We were sitting on the bench in the rescue, in the back of the rescue. And out it went onto the apparatus floor, and we went out. That happened a couple more times. And I'm not quite sure how long the turnaround was, but after a while, it stayed on. After a while, we either hit it or something. I forget what it was, but there wasn't anybody in particular throwing it. But and then, of course, we carried it around for a long time before anybody actually used it. And then eventually we used it. And then a couple of guys were like, holy crap, did you see that? Did you see that? And before you know it, guys that were throwing it out the back door were sold on it, and it was saving us a lot of work and a lot of injuries. And it was actually speeding things up dramatically. You could force 3 or 4 heavy-duty metal doors in a metal frame. In a New Law tenement, you could force 3 or 4 doors in a minute and a half. It used to be 2 minutes to get one door. Banging, 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 banging. Now, obviously, we were moving away from one thing and into something else. And of course, if you know anything about the rabbit tool, it's best used and almost only used on substantial metal doors. The better the door, the better that tool works. And little old law tenement wooden doors, you don't even think about it. You wouldn't even carry it in there. It's not necessary. So using a Halligan was still a necessary art, but we stopped using it to a great degree, some of us, when hitting the metal doors, because it just worked so well. However, as you already said, what happens is you stop using something, you start driving an automatic car for a year, and then you jump back in a car with a clutch. You're not going to be that good at doing it. Same thing with the Halligan. So now, as I mentioned when I first started, that was a long time ago when I was in Rescue 3. I was a young fireman. I went all the way up to battalion chief. I spent 17 years as a chief, and I'm retired for 8 years. So we're talking decades and decades it's been around now. And it's almost like it was never not there. There's things that we use it for. There's things we don't use it for. I think the Halogen skills and the manual force of entry skills have been revitalized, and I'll just call them, healthy and good. And I guess that's what we could probably spend the rest of the show talking about all the things that you can do, with the Halligan, and along with other tools or even by itself.
Well, and we need to get to the history here in a second about that. But and I'm glad, it's been a long time since we first talked. I mean, it's been years and years and years and years, decades since we talked about, our skills with the Halogen, deteriorating a little bit because of the rabbit tool, if you will. But and we've come back around so far. But hey, John, I almost forgot. Before we go any further, we need to acknowledge our sponsor for our show. Our show is being sponsored by MSA, and they have always been there for us. If you know anything about MSA, to check out the latest from MSA, go to msafire.com, and we'll talk more about something they're doing a little bit later. That's pretty freaking incredible. But that being said, I know when we look back at the creation of the Halogen tool, okay, and the history will tell us, it was 1948 when it found its way into the firehouses, and I know you're very I'll say very partial, not because it's a great tool, but because of the chief himself, Hugh A. Halligan. What was his middle name again?
Augustine.
Augustine. He was a firefighter with the FDNY for 43 years, 1960, 1915.
His first company, 88 engine.
88 engine. So 88 engine, first company, all the way up to first deputy commissioner. And where was he a battalion chief at? Do you remember where he was a beast?
Besides the 6th Battalion, he was in the great 1/8 Battalion. That's right.
Do we know anybody that worked at? Let me see. Was the battalion commander there, Chief Salka for the 1/8? But yeah, so 43 years with the FDNY. And you know, if you look and you do your research, we can look at how he was, you know, like most great firefighters and great bosses, he was concerned about creating a lighter, safer tool for firefighters. At that time, I guess, John, you guys were using the claw tool to force open doors, and that had been around since about 1920. But he looked at it; it was heavy, and the striking surface was off center, resulting in numerous injuries. And then the Kelly tool,
still a great big tool, and the actual finished Halogen was dramatically different. Maybe not even dramatically; it was considerably different. Still had a lot of the features of the claw tool. The shaft and the fork were almost identical. Obviously, he lightened it up a little bit, and the other end he recreated completely with the adze and the point.
Yeah, and well, we've done that. Look at how far we've come. Hell, pike poles were whaling hooks. That's where the whole concept came from. They used it on Jamestown to pull down the shacks on each side of the shack when the settlement was burning. But they talk about the Kelly tool, another one designed by Captain John Kelly, Ladder 163 from the FDNY. It was welded, and he looked at it as being kind of heavy as well. But this is where Chief Halligan came in. And you talk about, you know, he came up with the 3 workable ends with this tool, the adze end, the pick, and the fork, all of which could be driven with a flathead axe or a maul or a sledge or whatever you have.
Or another Halligan.
Or another Halogen. I kind of like, you know, as another option, I like to have a lot of different options to me, but, you know, for a lot of these buildings where you have a tight squeeze where doorways or when you're up against the wall is, especially when you're doing it by yourself or you can't get 2 guys in there because of that wall, you know, you've done this. We used to make these all the time, is taking a sledge and cutting the handle down, wrapping it with, you know, with the wire and the friction tape and all that stuff, putting a knob on it, make it like a Thor club, if you will, something that was, you know, about maybe, you know, your forearm's length, a little bit longer, that you can kind of lock in. You can hold like a big hammer, big mallet, and give you something where maybe the 3 foot 6 inch, 3 foot, I think it's 3.6 on the handle of the axe, it may be a little bit too long, and, you know, for where you're at, jammed up in a corner. But this guy, I mean, we're talking about a man who was pretty freaking creative with a lot of different things, and highly respected on your job, wasn't he, Chief Halligan?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Anybody who innovates things, you know, and we've had our differences. I've had my differences with some of the new things over the course of my career. You know, some of them, I mean, the rabbit tool is one of them. That was 40 years ago, 35 years ago. And now it's old news. But he was an innovator, and I think people knew that. And he was well respected. He got up through the ranks and been in plenty of places where he made a mark. And he was trying to improve the lot of the firefighter, make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit lighter. Obviously, you still need a heavy tool. That was still the days of heavy fortifications and just using heavy iron tools to break down most doors. There, you know, obviously, through the lock was still something that was probably attempted back then. But you know, a heavy tool was a heavy tool. But he was well known and respected, and the fact that it was him that introduced the tool and designed it may have made the difference in it being accepted or not.
Well, and it's kind of funny because you know me and what a fire buff I am, and you know, I've got this radio hanging over my shoulders, this portable that a buddy of mine found on the street somewhere from the old days that I've added now to my collection. But I'm looking right now in my office. I've got 2 Halligans sitting there. I've got an original Hugh Halligan tool, and John, you heard me say before that so many fire departments are throwing away their history. They're just pitching helmets and coats and their old rigs and tools out the door and their old journals, and it's criminal when you see that. And I was at a place, John, and during lunchtime, out on the apparatus floor at the back part of the bay, you could see a pallet with a bunch of stuff. It was old hose piled up on it. And to our listeners, don't ever get rid of anything. I'll pay to ship it to my house. If it's hose, it's nozzles, I don't care what it is. I don't sell nothing. I'm not a dealer. I love collecting. don't ever throw your stuff out, okay? That being said, John, I think you've heard me tell a story. There was a pallet, and you could see the hose, and I from across the bay, I could see a Halogen tool sticking out of the pile. And you know it, if you ever seen an original Hugh Halogen tool, so I saw it. I go running across the floor, and I pull it out. It's rusted. I go, what are you guys doing? They go, oh, we're cleaning out all our junk from that other room. I said, but this is a Halogen tool. They go, yeah, but we got newer ones. I go, I know, but this is an original Hugh Halogen tool. Yeah, I know, but I said, no, guys, you should clean this up. This should be hanging on the wall in the firehouse. This should be in a display case. They go, no. I said, no. I said, look, if you're not going to keep this, all right, I'll ship it home. I'll pay to ship it home because they won't have on the airplane. But please, and John, and I'll mention this. A lot of our listeners, you go to my YouTube channel, Chief Lasky. I did a video on this very thing where I actually showed you the difference between the original Halligan and the Halligan of today. We'll talk about fire hooks in a little bit, but John, I've always told people you can always identify. First of all, if you've ever seen one, you don't have to look at what I'm going to tell you, and you'll know it's one. But you can always, right? You look at the fork end of it, all right, on the tines, and you flip, and on the two prongs, on one of them is his signature. Hugh A. Halligan, his signature is embossed on there, and on the bottom prong, or the second one, there's the initials AM with a little t, capital DG. So capital AM, little t with a capital DG, and the initials in Latin, all right, stood for the greater glory of God. And the small t in the center was supposed to symbolize a cross. And I always tell people, can you imagine doing that nowadays? You'd be sued. But that's the quickest way, John, right? If you want to know if you've got an original hand, because in some of it may actually, I've seen them where all you see is Hugh and A, and the rest of his signatures wore off because the bar's been used all those years. It's a solid bar, it's not pinned. But folks, if you're ever looking to see if you have, we've told you on the show how to identify what age leather helmet you have by looking inside and looking at the pin in the top, the plate. Flip it over, look at the fork end, look on the two tines, the two prongs. You'll see your signature Hugh A. Halligan, and you'll see AM, T, DG on there, and you got one in your.
And that's really just the historical end of it. Obviously, that original Halligan has been modified greatly and with fantastic results to make it even more effective for the modern firefighter and even more effective for manual forcible entry. So it's not like if you can find an old one, that's the best thing in the world to throw in a truck and start using. It probably is not, but historically speaking, it's a collector. It's a nice piece.
Exactly, and everything started somewhere, and then it took your friend from Firehooks, him working with Chief Halligan a long time ago, and him taking the tool, and he actually, John, on the newer one, I think it's called the Pro Bar, he took the fork and he kind of flattened it out a little bit and widened it a little bit with a little curve to it. And then it adds that instead of being straight, there's a little curve to it as well, the horn. And
both the adze and the fork have a little bevel at the end. Yes. They're not just straight blades, just similar to an axe. You don't want them to bite in like an axe and get stuck into something,
But everything we've done, hell, and if history has it right, the city of Boston was the first to purchase, we're talking a little more history here, and placed the tool in its apparatus in 1950. And they later on gave Chief Halligan a certificate of merit, stating, John, for his vision and ingenuity in developing an all-purpose tool, the Halogen tool, which renders the maximum in utility, efficiency, and speed to the fire service operations involving forcible entry, emergency demolition, and overhauling. That was Boston. Unfortunately, and it makes sense due to city laws and stuff. He couldn't sell it directly to the FDNY, so a lot of you guys had to buy them on their own. But let's talk about the tool for a second, John. The beveled handle, if you will, was to allow a little bit of a grip so it's not, rounded and not slipping. This is what I used to do with my Halligan. We used to wrap them. We used to do take the clothesline cord or the lamp cord and, wrap it like a barbershop's pole, tape with the plastic electrical tape, then come over with the friction tape. But right in the middle, this, if you take a Halogen tool and you hold it in the palm of your hand and you center it, it's balanced. There's a balance to it. You can actually hold it. And in the center, you see those bevels where it comes together on the Pro Bar. Then it's kind of smooth and, bevel. I used to take, John, the plastic hockey tape, electrical tape, and I used to do a little ball about the size of a big marble, all right, and then tape it. And what it did was it when I was carrying the tool or if I was in the smoke, no matter which way I was going, that little ball fit right into the palm of my hand.
Prevent it from sliding, yeah.
Yeah, prevent it from sliding. And you know, so if I was crawling and, you know, searching with it, you know, I'd have the fork and the adze end out in front of me with the fork and the adze down. Not the fork, I'm sorry, the adze and the horn. The adze and the horn down, kind of like so it would keep my knuckles off the ground as I'm searching with it. But that little, just a simple thing one of my buddies taught me, put that little ball to keep it, you know, so you got your balance. It doesn't slide like you say. It was just a simple thing, but what a great
I'll
tool.
tell you another thing, which was interesting. And you know, some of these modifications are wonderful. Some of them are great, but then some of them prevent you from doing some other things that are wonderful. So, for example, you know, wrapping, using the rope and the tape on the handle for better grip is fantastic for pulling and pushing with that tool and holding onto it in the smoke and the dark and the snow and the rain. But what does it prevent you from doing? Now, I remember the first time I saw it was with Bobby Morris somewhere with Rescue One. They take the fork end now. The fork end of the Halligan, if you're looking at it where the shaft meets the fork, it's not a square corner. It's sort of, the fork goes and then it sort of molds up a little bit and then it widens out to the back of the fork and then the fork goes forward.
Right.
But what they do is they take that corner and they cut it square. And the reason they do that is now you can hold that Halligan tool with the fork in the door and in zero visibility. You could lay the head of an axe, flathead axe, on the handle. A firefighter could be at the other end of it, holding it, right? And he could lay a flat end axe on the handle, and you could slide that tool as fast as you want towards the fork. And when it hits the fork, it strikes it at a 90-degree angle, and it's as if you're hitting the end of the tool, and it bangs that fork right into position. If you don't modify the tool, you could never do that. You would slide your axe along the handle, and it would hit that little curve there, and it would throw it right off the handle. You would never get an impact at the end.
Right.
So obviously, if you ever want to do that, you're not wrapping that tool. That's not a tool that's going to have the rope and the tape on the handle, which is a fantastic feature. But again, if you have one or two of them cut and modified so you can use them in zero visibility, then that's just another option for you to take and use the tool for.
Well, and how easy it. I know there's a lot of people. Seth Taylor, one of the captains of Louisville, he's a welder, big time welder for years, and he put together a force entry door that's phenomenal. But it's pretty easy. You've talked about before about some of your guys and some of the people you know about them creating their. I think Mickey Conboy, some other guys that have built props that right in the back of the firehouse that a Proby, maybe, you know, some other things where you can go back and you can force a door without busting the door and replace the pins or the, you know, whatever you're doing with it, you know, the wooden dowels and stuff like that. But you know, staying proficient with it and knowing the tool. I want to go back to something before I forget. One of the other things, John, that in talking about how that flat end of that, you know, the top part of the fork on the Halogen for like striking is, a lot of those tools have a chain link welded to it. And I know a lot of guys in the city of Chicago, I know a lot of your guys, you know, had done that for a couple of reasons. One was the roof man, you know, going up to the top of the roof. I used to see this in Chicago a lot on a flat roof going up there, you know, with their rescue rope or their little shit, you know, be able to snap on the end of it and lower that Halligan down to the window on the top floor that maybe you can't get to, right? And lowering it down where it's about at window length and grabbing a hold of that part of the rope, pulling it up, throwing the Halligan out, bam. And it was a way of helping to take some windows that maybe you can't get from the tip of a ladder or whatever.
Not many times in Rescue 3 up in Harlem, man, we could vent 3 or 4 or 5 top floor windows from the roof without ever being inside the building, you know, and you could throw that tool like you were trying to throw it across the street. And as soon as the rope went taut, then it just created an arc swinging down. And the farther and harder you threw it, it never bounced back. It always just pulled it tight and then zoom, swoon down. I mean, the only hazard there was a guy standing near the window, but generally there was nobody in there at that time. And that worked really well. And that was just simply, you know, welding, tacking on a little chain hook or a little eyelet, you know, on the corner. Yep.
Yeah, and I've got a video. I think it's Brooklyn when I was there, with you know, at one of the fires with Lieutenant John Cullen, 235 engine. I was standing on the street and I was filming, and I watched one of your guys from FTY doing that.
And that was at the fork end.
Yeah.
That's the fork end.
Yeah.
That one, you got the ads and the point swinging down. And if one of those hit the window, rather than the back of the bar or the shaft, there's even better chance of it breaking right through and doing a good vent job.
I was watching.
I never had trouble with the rope breaking or being cut by the glass.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that next because a lot of people probably asked that, but I've never seen it either. But it was, I think he did 3 windows. I can remember for sure 3 windows, and he like you said, I watched him, lowered it down. I'm like, oh God, I was so excited being able to film that, just pulled it back up. He, like you said, he chucked that sucker, and then boom, and down it came smash. And one time it actually hit alongside off the bricks. He pulled it up again, threw it. And I think about 2 times, 3 times each window gone. I mean, enough to break enough to vent.
What's interesting is we could probably mention, I'm going to mention a few right now. We could probably mention for the next, I don't know how long we could talk about it, without ever getting into forcible entry. We could probably start to mention uses of the Halligan tool. And I don't want to say I've done them all. I've certainly done a lot of them. With other than conventional forcible entry, other than popping a door, right? I remember we talked about through the lock, one of our previous discussions. And another thing you can do through the lock is you can pull a cylinder, and then you can put the point rather in the hole and strike it with the tool, and you can knock the lock off the inside of the door, a rim lock off the inside of the door, right? Another thing is you can take that hook. So you're up on the roof, your partner's cutting the roof, you got a 4x4, 4x6, whatever size hole cut. Now he can make that little corner cut, that little corner curve cut for you to reach in with a hook and pull it open. But if he doesn't, the guy standing right there with a Halligan takes the Halligan, you hold the fork right in your hand, and when you swing it, you put the point down. The point goes right into the roof surface. What do? You yank it, pulls the whole cut section right off the roof, and then you're looking at the wood. Then the guys with the hooks, or you could continue to work with the Halligan and use the point like you would on a hook, and you could pull the wood up. One of my favorite ones was forcible entry, but it wasn't with 2 tools. It was still with just the Halligan. If you had an inward opening door, which most apartment doors are, talking about a wood door with a wood frame, you could take the Halligan, and depending on what side the doorknob was on, let's put the doorknob on the right-hand side. You could take that Halligan. Again, you could hold the fork end. You could swing the other end, and you could penetrate the point or the hook into the door jamb right against the door. So now you're holding the tool. It's perpendicular to the door. The hook or the point is buried into the door jamb. And what's facing straight down from that hook? What's facing straight down against the door? The ads.
Yeah.
What you got to do now is 2 feet out, 3 feet out where the fork is, push down on that fork. You can literally use that leverage, boom, and pop the door open with one tool. So you can swing it in, boom, swing it right in where the cylinder of a lock is, and push down. You put enough weight on that thing, you're gonna bust that door right open with just the use of the Halligan by itself. No striking, no banging it in, no fork end, just using that end alone.
Well,
fantastic jobs right there that you can use the Halligan for.
And I wanted to ask you about one more of those, but we got to take a quick break to acknowledge our great sponsor again. Folks, you're listening to the Command Post on FireEngineering.com with Chief John Salka and Chief Rick Lasky, and we want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, MSA, for their continued support of the fire service. MSA created a wireless handheld device that includes thermal imaging, firefighter ranging, a motion alarm, and cloud technology with GPS, all in an effort to keep firefighters connected to dispatch, command, and most importantly, to each other. So for more information on that, shoot over to msafire.com. It's something we've been wanting for a long time in the fire service, and there it is. So thank you, MSA, for sponsoring our show. John, back to the uses, and you kind of mentioned it. We used to teach and still do. For some of the guys that if you're proficient enough with it, and you don't have to really be a baseball player, but you could take that Halligan, if you needed to really, you could take that Halligan by the fork end, and with the ads and the horn, swing that thing, drive it into the door jamb against the door. And like you said, then, like you popped it before, take it and you actually would push on the heel, I guess it would be, of the ads end, and pop that door the same way too. For some guys, maybe you get caught where for some reason, I don't know why you would, but you don't have a Halligan with your sledge, or you dropped it, or whatever. So, or in a pinch, or you just need to get a good solid purchase, point on that door. That was one more way. So we talked about venting with it. We talked about forcing doors with it. We talked about popping, using the horn, if you will, to push out a lock. One of the other things we've talked about, and I know they used to teach this all the time in Chicago, I know in FDOI, was marrying two Haligans together with the forks, John, right? If you need a little bit more oomph, if you will, like a persuader bar for a hydrant wrench. We used to have the pipe.
Leverage.
To slide over the hydrant wrench to give you a little bit more leverage. Same, right? With taking it and the two forks and kind of marrying those together over each other. And then one guy holds, you hold your hand over those forks so they pop off, and it gives you more leverage and a little bit more reach, right?
Absolutely. Another great thing I like to do when I had the roof was, for those of you that have a roof position, or if you end up on the roof of an older building that's got a bulkhead, and we know what a bulkhead is. It's a little structure built up on the roof when the interior stairs of that building is designed to go to the roof. So you have a 5-story building, you get up to the 5th floor, there's still another stairway. You go up that last set of stairs, and where are you? You pop that door open, you're standing up on the roof. And when you're looking from the roof position, it just looks like a little shack or a little building with a slanted roof standing on with a door on one side. The point is that door opens out. When you get to the top of the stairs, you push it out onto the roof. Now, if you're a roof firefighter, or if you climb up from somewhere else and you're trying to vent that roof, or if you're trying to gain entry to that building from the roof, obviously you got that door that swings out towards you now. That's a different forcible entry challenge than a door that swings in, like an apartment door from a hallway. So what we discovered in the FDNY, and it's been in existence for years because so many of the buildings are so old, is the sill. When you get to the top of that door, most of those buildings are 100 years old. People have been stepping on that sill for 100 years. It's pressed down a little bit. There might be a 1-inch opening, maybe a 2-inch opening. The door is still closed. It's still latched. It might even be locked. But from the outside, you can look right at the bottom of the door and see that you can practically fit your hand through there, including your knuckles. Obviously, you can't go much further than that. So now you take your ads. You take your Halligan, you stand it up with the ads, you slide it right under the door, and now the Halligan will be standing straight up right in front of the door, touching the door with the fork at the top, right? Now you grab that fork, and as you pull it down, what you're going to do is you're going to pry the bottom of that door out. Even though it's latched, even though the lock is engaged, you're going to bend the bottom of that door out. If you have another tool with you, slide it right in there like the point of a hook. Now you let that tool go. The hook's going to hold the door open. Now you can start working your way up the side with the adze and slide it in right above the hook and pry it out. That adze is at a pretty much 90-degree angle off the shaft. That's great leverage. You can pop an outward opening door that's pretty well secured by yourself with the Halligan and the hook being used just to hold the purchase. Another great use of that tool.
And let me ask you a question before we run out of time here tonight. We both love the Halogen. I mean, if you're a firefighter, the Halogen tool. I feel bad for you, but that being said, John, there have been a couple line of duty deaths where there's been a couple of things called into suspect, if you will, where the firefighter ended up being trapped and losing their life. Was a firefighter off a truck, used their Halogen to force the door to the building, then left their Halogen because I forced the door, I don't need it inside. Left it outside. I've seen that before. That's like we both talked about people leave the pump can, the pressurized water can, the pump can outside like a door chock. I've actually seen people, they force the door and they throw it off to the side and they go inside. They're like, well, I already forced the door. What I needed inside for? And in the case of Mark Langvart in Denver, when he got into that file room, that storage room, that 11 by 6 storage room, and with the windows and with the burglar mesh on there, he left his tool outside at the front door. And not to say it would have made a difference now, but I think it would have. And there's a lot of instances where I've seen people leave. And I think it's a training issue, John, right? It's maybe a leadership, coaching, and counseling issue.
Absolutely.
Why would you leave your tool?
I never got in the habit of leaving a tool anywhere. I'll tell you, in the FDNY, it's a pretty big rule in the FDNY. What you leave the rig with is what you got in your hand all day long. Not only do you not leave it anywhere, you don't even hand it off to anybody. You don't even give it to somebody next to you saying, give me the Halligan for a minute. I want to pop it. If you get something you want done, let me know what you want done. This is my tool. I came in with it. I'm going to handle it. Now, do we take that a smidgen too far now and then? Maybe we do. But I think the purpose of it was to teach people and ingrain in you that you don't let go of your tool. I don't know why anybody would ever leave a tool at the front door to an apartment or to a building or anywhere else in a hallway when you could use the piece of equipment that you just mentioned, a chalk. They make all different kinds of chalks that you can carry stuck in your helmet, in your pocket. I mean, all over the place. You just grab a chalk and you throw a chalk in the door. There's all different kinds of chalks. There's little metal ones you can hang on the hinge. There's wooden ones you can bang under the door. There's wooden ones you can throw up on top of the door that it'll stay. I mean, I don't know how many times I have pulled a piece of furniture over to the door, or I've rolled up the carpet, the entry carpet, rolled it in half and jammed it under the bottom of the door.
That's a good idea.
I would never. I'm nobody special, but I would never leave my tools at the front door if I was proceeding into an apartment or into a flat or into any other occupancy. Absolutely not. Not a real good idea.
No, and again, time and time I see it. A lot of the videos and stuff, and that would happen probably once by me, and then somebody would get, we'd talk, and then the word would spread, and it wouldn't happen again. But there's been several cases where, it's been, it's like, John, there were times young firefighters would tell me when we do essentials classes at U of I that, I don't need my flash. Where's your flashlight? Well, it's daytime. I know it's daytime, but it's not daytime inside a burning building, and it's like, why would you not bring your flashlight? Why would you leave the pump can outside if you're the can man? And why would you not bring your Halogen with you like you said, you don't let go of your tools. Like you said, I need something pulled. I need some ceiling pulled. What do you need, John? And he says, what do you need? And you push your way in there and say, let me finish it. I'll do it. But you don't ever give up your tools, just like you don't ever give up the nozzle, right? And you don't leave your Halogen outside. So,
but all the tools, I mean, man, oh man, absolutely not.
Well, absolutely incredible tool, and we can thank Chief Hugh Halligan for like so many innovators in the in the fire service from Breslin. I mean, we could go on and on. We could do a show on just all the innovators in the fire service that have come up with ideas, because you know how it is. You sit at the kitchen table in the Bronx, and one of your guys goes, "Hey, Chief, I got an idea. Remember that last call? That seems to be," and all of a sudden now, on a napkin. That's how we created the first Saving Our Own prop. Seth Taylor, we were at the kitchen at Darren Woodridge, and we sat down. I drew on a napkin what I needed done for to be able to do the Nance stroke, the handcuff knot, the stairs rescue, the ladder, the bailout, right? Whether it's rope slide, ladder bail, how to do the Denver, all these different things, wall breaches, everything. I still have the napkin in a drawer here, the pictures of it. Those were guys sitting at the kitchen table, just like. I'm sure Chief Halligan sat down over a cup of coffee and said,
"Oh, you bet.
We got to come up with a tool that works better." So
look what Jimmy McCormick has done with shipping containers.
Oh,
he's changed the fire service training world with shipping containers, right? Something as simple as that. I mean, obviously he's added a lot to it, a lot of ingenuity and creativity and talent and skills and welding and cutting. But man, oh man, oh man, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Well, very, very cool. A great topic for tonight, buddy. To our listeners, with everything going on with the coronavirus, like John said, our country will prevail. Stay vigilant. Remain vigilant. Stay proactive. Take care of your people. Hey, look out for your seniors. If you have seniors in your family and your community, I saw the Chicago Police Department, John, pull their recruits out of the academy because they're not going to have the groups together, and they've assigned them to different precincts at 2 or 3 at a time, like in different phones, and they're calling seniors in their neighborhoods and their precincts, checking on them. Do they need anything? Because we know it's affecting the seniors and the medically challenged the most. Absolutely. So keep an eye on your folks. Again, prayer works. Say a little prayer that we get through this. We will. Keep watching our calendars. We're rescheduling all our classes. And before we close things out here, John, once again, we folks, you've been listening to the Command Post on FireEngine.com with Rick Lasky and John Salka. Before we close things out, we want to once again tonight thank our sponsor, MSA, for their support. John, we're on Twitter and Facebook, and your website, johnsalka.com, or would you rather them reach out to you at an email? I know it's on both, but
email, Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
And I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com. And great topic, buddy. Great. Ed, again, tied back to the 18th Battalion, the world-class battalion in the FDNY, and Chief Halligan and Chief Salka, But just think of it. Just seriously, I've thought of that before. I've thought, like you said, some of the firehouses you could walk by, if you see the little eyelets screwed into the door jambs on the bay doors, that's where they used to hang the little string and chain for the horses. And you go, God, can you imagine there was actually horses that responded from this firehouse? I'm sitting there going, out of all, I mean, there's been some great people at the FDY, but just that, thinking, God, Chief Halligan sat at that kitchen table, you know, having coffee with the guys, just like you did. I just think that's so cool. Just what a great guy.
Cool thought. Yep.
What a legend. Hey, folks, in closing, John, I always ask you to keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Right now, we'd like to add a whole bunch of people to that. And that's keep, again, all our firefighters, police officers, dispatchers, EMS providers, all those folks in the hospitals and the urgent care. Everybody's doing this. And really say a prayer for those that we're protecting, that their families, health-wise and financially, everything that this works through, be there for each other. This is what makes our country the greatest in the world, is that we come together for things like this. And remember, never forgetting means never forgetting. So be safe. God bless you. And thanks for listening tonight.